Bismillah. It is worth noting that people who do not know much about Islam tend to paint all religious books with the same brush. Yet that is not correct when it comes to the book of Islam, the Noble Qur'an. The Qur'an is different from all other religious books on earth by many characters as part of the promise of the Qur'an itself holds. Allah, God, says in chapter 15 verse number 9, إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. Indeed, it is we who sent down the Qur'an, and we are indeed preservers of it. Which means God promises that the Qur'an will always be preserved. In addition to this promise, the Noble Qur'an stands out from the rest of the books by complying with the following 5 points. Number 1, the Qur'an has been in public's eye ever since it was being revealed during the lifetime of Messenger Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and not the property of the elites hidden in some basement. Number 2, the content of the Noble Qur'an has been agreed upon ever since the time of the last review between Messenger Muhammad and Angel Gabriel, and did not wait for 300 years to vote over what goes into the book. Number 3, the Noble Qur'an is recited, written, and read in a living language, Arabic, which is spoken and recited by over 1 billion people and not in ancient dead languages which no one currently speaks. Number 4, the Noble Qur'an has been preserved in 2 ways or 2 manners. By millions of people memorizing the entirely unchanged revelation, and by preserving the written Arabic text between 2 covers. The memorization of the Noble Qur'an is confirmed by an unbroken chain of narration, where every single narrator is mentioned by name. No other religious text can affirm their chain of narration as it was revealed to them in its entirety as it is with the Qur'an. The Messenger Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said in the authentic hadith in the book of Imam Muslim, "My Lord has said to me, I have revealed unto you a book that no water can wash away," meaning its primary preservation is in the chests of men and not in written manuscripts. Lastly, the Noble Qur'an itself challenges us to put it to the test, try to bring something like it, or even find contradictions in it. So, we have the authentic text, number 1, of the Qur'an, which is in our hands. We know who wrote it, we know who memorized it, we know who compiled it, and we know who transferred it to us. Everything else will be considered as text number 2 and must be compared to text number 1 to verify its authenticity. And if it does not match text number 1, then they are untrustworthy and rejected. For example, Sana'a manuscripts, which were found to go back to year 671 CE, which is about 40 years after the death of the messenger, are considered untrustworthy because no one knows who, when, and where they were written. In the year 1972, and during the renovation of the ceiling of the big mosque in Sana'a, Yemen, laborers found thousands of old papers on which Quranic and non-Quranic fragments were written. It is believed that those manuscripts go back to the 1st Hijri century. According to one German researcher, Dr. Gerd Puhn, was using these manuscripts as an evidence that the Noble Qur'an evolved over time, just like the Bible. He even went further in accusing the Yemeni government of hiding these manuscripts by saying, "They want to keep this thing low profile as we do," referring to Christians. Where in reality, the Yemeni government held an exhibition of those manuscripts in year 1984, to which Gerd Puhn himself was invited and attended. Furthermore, the claims that Gerd wrote about these manuscripts to prove the incredibility of the Quran are absolutely worthless in regards to the authenticity of the Quran we have in hand. He mentions that the omitting of letter Alif from certain words other than what is in the Uthmani Quran can make the Quran incredible, which is not true, because what matters is the memorization and the flexibility of those words to carry the meaning without having the letter alif in them, which is a common theme in the Quranic way of writing to this day. He also argues that those untrustworthy copies show that other recitations have been omitted after the time of the Messenger, which is a common knowledge to any student of the Quranic studies and the Quran history. Imam Ibn al-Jazari, may Allah be pleased with him, said in his book النشر في القراءات العشر, the proclamation of the 10 recitations, he says, what is commonly known today of the 7, 10 or the 13 recitations compared to the first decades are few in number to what used to be recited, and the one who have studied this knowledge know it for certain. Note, these recitations do not change the context of the Quran. Lastly, Dr. Puin mentions that some of the chapters have a different order other than the Uthmani Quran, which is not considered an issue to Muslims. Even today, there are copies of parchments with various chapters of the Quran put together in different orders to make it easier for kids to memorize. In addition to that, as was narrated by Imam Bukhari, Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, was asked by a Bedouin to see her copy of the Quran so he can put it in the same chapters order, and she said to him, "It shouldn't harm you whichever order of the chapters you recite with." Furthermore, these manuscripts had two sets of text, one that has been erased and one that was written on top of the other. Most likely, this parchment was used as a teaching tool similar to that of chalkboards and whiteboards used today around the world. In year 2015, the Birmingham manuscript held by the Birmingham University Library was found to match word for word the Quran we have in our hands today. While we do not know who wrote this manuscript, it dates much earlier than the manuscripts of Sana'a in Yemen. The Birmingham manuscript is found to have been written during the period that the Messenger, peace and blessings be upon him, lived. To bring any other manuscript as evidence against or for the Quran, we cannot neglect historical evidences by picking and choosing or by making claims for their authenticity when there is no evidence for any of them. The Birmingham manuscripts do not prove the Quran true. The authenticity of the Quran is the only proof that the Birmingham manuscript contains the true revelation of Allah. And all praises belong to God who preserved his book. If you have a question about Islam, ask a Muslim.